What you are about to see is a true story about the brave men of the 381st Bomb Group, stationed at Ridgewell, England during World War II.
October 8th, 1943. A day etched in the annals of history for the 381st Bomb Group in England. Amidst the grim reality of the Second World War, survival was the order of the day. In this daunting atmosphere, the men of the 381st Bomb Group prepared for their daily battle, their 36th mission since they arrived at the Ridgewell Air Base earlier that year. Among them were two individuals, Staff Sergeant Wade McCook and Staff Sergeant Matthew Burke, who had no inkling of the extraordinary events that were about to unfold. Their mission was to strike Bremen, Germany, a target well guarded and known for its fierce resistance. Little did they know, this day would see 7 of their planes not returning to base. Yet in the face of overwhelming odds, miracles can happen. As the B-17 soared high over the enemy territory, the first signs of trouble began to emerge. The plane, a metallic behemoth in the sky, was in the throes of a battle against forces both within and without. The number 4 engine had been lost to ground flak. The number 3 engine was a runaway, a renegade rebelling against the desperate attempts to control it. The number 2 gas tank was not faring much better, riddled with bullet holes and leaking precious fuel. German fighter planes, like predators honing in on their prey, were closing in. Their intent was clear: to bring down the B-17, to silence its roar, to extinguish its life. The effects of their bullets hitting the plane were palpable. Each impact a shudder, each shudder a grim echo of mortality. Inside this besieged fortress in the sky, the situation was growing more dire. A 20mm shell, breaching the defences of the plane, found its mark in Matthew Burke, one of the waist gunners. Striking him in the shoulder and head, it knocked him unconscious, leaving him vulnerable and incapacitated. Wade McCook, the tail gunner, crawled forward through the chaos. His mission was clear: to render first aid to his fallen comrade, to fight for a life amidst the dance of death surrounding them. He reaches Burke, his hands working quickly, trying to stem the flow of blood, trying to keep death at bay. The pilot's voice rings out above the cacophony of war. "Bail out!" It's a scramble, a desperate rush for survival. Men leap into the unknown, trusting their parachutes, their prayers and their luck. But 2 men are left behind. Burke, unconscious and bleeding, and McCook torn between his duty to his comrade and his own survival. McCook stands pulling on his parachute. He's about to leap into the abyss, but a glance at Burke makes him pause. His comrade, his brother in arms, needs him. But before he can make a decision, an explosion rocks the plane. The B-17 is shattered in half, the force of the explosion sending McCook tumbling to the floor, landing next to Burke. The world spins, the roar of the engines replaced by the howl of the wind. The bellowing thunder of the blast echoed in their ears as the tail section of the plane, now a detached fragment, began its descent towards the earth. But a peculiar thing was happening. Instead of plummeting straight down, the tail section was falling at an unexpectedly slower rate. This was not the rapid death dive one would expect from a broken plane. It was more akin to a leaf, gently swaying and wafting in the breeze, gradually making its way to the ground. The reason for this unusual spectacle was a miraculous combination of circumstances. The position of the 2 men inside the tail section had inadvertently balanced it perfectly. Their weight distribution, coupled with the large surface area of the horizontal stabilizer, altered the dynamics of the fall. Imagine this: the horizontal stabilizer, which is the smaller wing located at the tail of the plane, was now acting as a parachute. This unusual parachute was catching enough wind to slow their descent dramatically. 4 miles of free fall lay ahead of them, a descent that under normal circumstances would be fatal, but on this day it was anything but normal. As they fell, the men were in a state of disbelief, gripped by the surreal nature of their predicament. The world outside was a blur, the wind howled in their ears, and the ground steadily approached. The moment of impact was inevitable, but when it came, it was not with the bone-shattering force they had braced themselves for. Instead, it was a relatively soft landing, survivable thanks to their slow descent. Against all odds, McCook and Burke had survived, but their trials were far from over. Their relief was short-lived. for they found themselves in enemy territory. Captured by the German army, they faced an uncertain future, far from their comrades, far from home. But for now, they were alive, and that in itself was a miracle. McCook was swiftly ushered into a prisoner of war camp, where he would spend the remainder of the global conflict. The grim confines of the camp were a stark contrast to the skies he'd once soared, but he held on, refusing to succumb to despair. Meanwhile, Burke, severely wounded by the shell that had pierced the plane, was taken to a nearby hospital. His recovery was a slow, excruciating process, a battle of its own against the injuries that threatened to claim his life. For several long months he fought, his spirit as unyielding as the day he'd boarded that fateful flight. In a surprising turn of events, Burke was included in a prisoner exchange with the United States, allowing him to return home. However, the scars of his ordeal were not just physical. His wounds ran deep, a lasting reminder of the war he'd survived, and he never fully recovered. In the face of insurmountable odds, McCook and Burke lived to tell the tale of their miraculous fall. Their story, a testament to human resilience and the unpredictability of fate, continues to inspire. In the throes of the harshest war, Staff Sergeants Wade McCook and Matthew Burke cheated death in an almost fantastical twist of events. Their miraculous survival left an indelible mark on the annals of history, a tale that stands tall amidst countless war stories.
Matthew Burke spent 5 months in 3 different hospitals before being transferred to Stalag Luft 6 at Heidkrug, located in East Prussia. Another 6 months passed before he was returned to America in a prisoner exchange. He suffered numerous wounds on his right side, including a complete fracture of the jaw and a shattered shoulder. After discharge, he went to work for the Federal Aviation Administration. He was 91 years old when he died in 2012. Wade McCook spent several years as a civilian before re-enlisting in the Air Force at the start of the Korean War. He was a flight engineer on a B-29 that was involved in a mid-air collision with another B-29 on February 1st, 1952. They crashed into the sea 5 miles off Bolo Point, Okinawa. All 12 crew members perished in the crash. He was 29 years old.
Watch him, Scotty.
I got my sights on him.
Check that B-17, Chuck. 3 o'clock. Motor smoking. Fighters, 10 o'clock.